Of the University of Nebraska-Lincoln combined choir. David, actually, in terms of immigration, we're hearing more about what some of the actions that they've been taking today.
Yeah, including ending birthright citizenship, which flows from the 14th Amendment of the Constitution, this idea that if you're born in this country, you're a citizen of this country. And a lot of this is going to be contested. So you're going to see a package of proposals using the military at the border and so on. There are going to be legal questions raised. That one in particular is going to be tested on the...
Some of this is for, I mean, sort of the sweeping nature of it. Some of it is for just to say that they tried to...
This is shock and awe. This is the shock and awe. I mean, I think they want to be as audacious as they can be. Now, again, this is a proposal that 2-to-1 the American people don't support. So this is chum for the base.
But I think also a lot of these deals will stir, discussion, just like Trump's, proposal on Greenland or Panama, these things that they're meant to, people are talking about all over the world. So the birthright citizenship, is it right if you come to this country illegally and you have a kid here? I understand that what the law says, but a lot of across America, people think that's not right.
But then some of this also we should remember is deeply popular. Declaring a national emergency on the border, that's going to free up potentially Pentagon funds or emergency funds to address. And obviously, calling cartels, transnational criminal organizations opens up some ways that we can respond.
Yes.
But to the point of any Trump presidency, there's always things that are very much in line with what the people asked him to do, and then things that become a woeful distraction and can often bog him down and take him away from executing what they wanted him to do.
Second with Caitlin comments. Caitlin?
Well, Anderson, just to give you a sense of what we're looking at, given this is such a rare thing that we almost rarely see in our nation's history, which is an indoor inauguration. And what you're looking at right now is something that was put together just in a matter of days. This is the Rotunda of the Capitol, of course, the main centerpiece of the Capitol when you remember and look at the iconic images of the Washington skyline. In this Rotunda is where, heads of former presidents have lain in state, where dignitaries have as well. It's a very solemn but grand space that they are going to be holding this inauguration, and you can see the stage there and the few chairs around where President-elect Trump will take the oath of office and be sworn in. He'll be sworn in by the Chief Justice of the United States Supreme Court, John Roberts. J.D. Vance will be sworn in by Justice Brett Kavanaugh, obviously two figures that have played critical roles in Trump's presidency and what it looks like from the first time around to 8 years later. And in those seats, it's about 750 chairs, based on what I heard from someone I talked to this morning as we were coming in and looking at what this is going to look like. It's going to be filled with Supreme Court justices, senior congressional leadership, members of Trump's cabinet, he hopes, if they get confirmed by those lawmakers on Capitol Hill, and some of the biggest VIPs that are going to be showing up at this inauguration here. Of course, we're looking at a lot of Trump's family that is in town with him. Also, his former vice president, Mike Pence, is going to be in that rotunda, and that'll be one of the most fascinating moments in a day filled with them, which is what it looks like to see Mike Pence and Donald Trump in that rotunda together for the first time. Of course, the famous place where Pence was 4 years ago on one of the darkest days that rotunda has seen, as it was filled with Trump supporters who had attacked the Capitol and broke inside. That all seems like so far away, thinking that it's 4 years ago, but of course the memories will still echo throughout that during that ceremony today. And so Trump's children will be seated in there. You saw Laura Trump walking in, who co-chaired the Republican committee during this convention. But looking at that rotunda on January 6th, remember we heard from Andy Kim. He was brand new on Capitol Hill when January 6th happened. He said he didn't know what to do that day. He was kind of at a loss for words. And he said at the Democratic convention, he got a trash bag and just started picking up trash in the halls of Congress because of what had happened to it on that day. Obviously, the scene is very different with their Ivanka Trump and Jared Kushner, Tiffany Trump and her husband as well, all entering the rotunda for this moment. We're here in Emancipation Hall, which is not far from where you see everyone walking into the doors right now. And there's a slew of Trump aides that I see entering the doors behind them. Emancipation Hall also is filled with a lot of notable figures. New York City Mayor Eric Adams is here. His comms director said on Twitter that he was just invited a few hours ago, earlier this morning, and obviously met with Trump at Mar-a-Lago not too long ago, and word that he is hoping for a pardon for his own legal troubles. There's Donald Trump Jr. entering the building with his Secret Service as well. Also, it says something about who else is invited here. I've seen Logan and Jake Paul and also Conor McGregor here. All of these figures that are often with Trump at events that he's held during the campaign, or certainly some of his biggest allies in MAGA media, as they've tried to use alternative forms of media in this campaign, Anderson. Obviously, just seeing who is in the room for this, especially when they had to narrow it down because it's happening indoors, does speak to who has had the most influence and could have the most influence on this second Trump term. And of course, there's Marine One sitting outside the west front or the east front of the Capitol. That is what will take President Biden to Joint Base Andrews after this is over. And then he is going on to a vacation in California and will no longer be on a plane designated as Air Force One, Anderson.
Caitlin, what's fascinating is there was a lot of discussion of who would be seated inside the rotunda given the limited seating. It's no longer outdoors. When you think about who was seated inside St. John's Church, which is obviously even a smaller room, the fact that Jeff Bezos, Tim Cook, all the tech titans were in that room, including Joe Rogan as well, it really gives you, that wasn't by accident. That wasn't because they are so close to Donald Trump. Donald Trump, the president-elect, is sending a message by having them in that inner sanctum, if you will. And clearly they will be in the rotunda as well.
Yeah, I've asked Trump allies, how does he feel about these big tech executives now coming down to Mar-a-Lago, singing his praises? Mark Zuckerberg, heavily critical of the Biden administration during a podcast with Joe Rogan, who was also inside that church today, just bringing everything full circle. And, I've asked, do they believe that their support and their 180 that they've done on Trump, for many of them, is genuine? It has kind of split the MAGA universe in a fascinating way, and that will be something to watch, that I'll certainly be watching as Trump takes office. Steve Bannon, obviously a powerful voice in the MAGA world, a senior advisor to Trump the last time he was in the White House, has been heavily critical of Mark Zuckerberg and has said that he doesn't believe his support of Trump is genuine, that it's just very clearly beneficial to him. That'll be interesting to see how Trump handles that and how he wields that, because I think what a lot of them have watched and are trying to emulate is the ultimate person who has curried the most favor with Trump, and that is Elon Musk, the only person he brought on stage with him yesterday at that rally. He did not bring on the Vice President-elect J.D. Vance or anyone else. Only Elon Musk came up there to speak, albeit briefly, during those remarks. It speaks to the people who have a lot of influence on Trump in this moment, and also those tech executives worried that Elon Musk has a lot more than they do in this moment.
Yeah, I think all of them saw Elon Musk's rise within the inner circle of Donald Trump, and obviously have now reached out as well, as you said.
And Anderson,
a lot of them are now in the inner sanctum. Yeah.
One other thing to just say is just, as we look at the historical notes here, it's been decades since a president was sworn in inside. The last one to do so, of course, was Ronald Reagan, given the weather the day that he was scheduled to be inaugurated. Inside that rotunda, lining it, are statues of former presidents, Ulysses S. Grant and others. Ronald Reagan is in that room where Trump will be sworn in, just like he was.
Let's go to check in with Jeff Zeleny, who's outside the Capitol. Jeff?
Anderson, we are on the east front of the Capitol, and we are watching as family members, as Caitlin was saying, just arrived a few moments ago. We saw Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump, of course, and their children. And this is one more example of really the notable difference between the second Trump term and the first. They will not have West Wing offices. They are here as family members, not senior advisors. However, as Caitlin was just talking about, the Elon Musk office on the White House complex, that is who is surrounding the soon-to-be president. But as we look behind here, there are more arrivals coming, and we are on the east front of the Capitol. And until Ronald Reagan's inaugural in 1980, his first one, all inaugurations were on the east front of the Capitol. The sun is shining down this way. We're looking out toward the Supreme Court and the Library of Congress, but it was changed to the west front of the Capitol about 4 decades or so ago. Well, today, of course, we'll be inside, but we are watching the arrivals now. The former presidents will be arriving soon, but Vice President Mike Pence, former Vice President Mike Pence, arrived just a few minutes ago, a short time ago. And think of the difference of 4 years. 4 years ago, it is these windows directly behind me here that were breached on the morning of the January 6th, and we are seeing now former President George W. Bush and Laura Bush arriving here at the Law Library door, just on the east front here. Of course, this is he now is the second in the line of former presidents, if you will, and an extraordinary piece of history. George W. Bush, Bill Clinton, and Donald Trump, all born in the same year, 3 months apart, in consecutive months, in June, in July, and in August of that year. So George W. Bush here, of course, arriving. He's the last Republican president to win the popular vote in his re-election bid. We also, of course, know and remember well what he thought about the first inaugural address, the American Carnage address. He told several people sitting around him, that was some weird, the S word, that was some weird stuff, we will say. So we will see what his reaction is to the speech this year. But he is one of the presidents who will be here. Bill Clinton also will be here with Hillary Clinton, and former President Barack Obama will also be here. Michelle Obama, notably, has decided not to come to this inaugural, as she did not also attend the funeral of Jimmy Carter. Anderson.
And Jeff, we expect President-elect Donald Trump and the first future First Lady, Melania Trump, will be leaving Blair House momentarily in order to go to the White House and have some time with the Bidens and ride in the same vehicle. President-elect Trump and President Biden both riding in the same vehicle. Let's talk about the relationship of these two. I mean, this is not something that then President Trump afforded President Biden the courtesy of this polite transition, this tea at the White House, the ride together. It was obviously a very different time 4 years ago.
Not only did he not afford him that, but he did not afford him the courtesy of a concession or an acknowledgement that he had won. And then he left town, and left Biden to be sworn in outside a scarred Capitol that was fenced in because of the events of January 6th. So, it is hard to forget that history, and if you're Joe Biden in particular, and you know, the end of this saga for Biden has been an unhappy one as well. So there's a lot of emotion swirling around here. It's really hard to imagine what these guys say to each other at this juncture.
If you were trying to forget it, President-elect Trump just yesterday at his rally said that he won.
That was Trump's motorcade heading to the White House.
He said he won the 2020 election just yesterday at his rally, and that it was stolen from him. So it's going to be impossible to forget. But again, that is one of the norm busting. I just want to mention something else, Anderson, because it just jumped out at me again. Donald Trump does this because he just won an election, and he does this. He did this as a candidate, and he just won an election. So there's nothing to stop him. But I think it was Caitlin who just said among those at the service was Conor McGregor. Just 2 months ago, a jury in Ireland awarded a woman $250,000 because she said he raped her, and the jury agreed, and he's standing there with the President-elect of the United States of America.
Let's go back to Jay.
Thanks so much, Anderson. So we see right now the outgoing first couple, outgoing President Joe Biden and outgoing First Lady Jill Biden standing at the portico of the White House waiting for the incoming President-elect Donald Trump and the incoming First Lady Melania Trump to arrive. It is one of these great American traditions, the peaceful transfer of power and the hospitality of bitter political rivals coming together because we are all Americans. It is a sight to see. It is a sight that we, as an American people, were denied 4 years ago. But it is good to have it back, and hopefully it will continue in perpetuity. Here is Donald J. Trump, the incoming 47th President of the United States. Let's take a look and see if we can hear it. There they go inside the White House, the 46th President of the United States and the 47th President of the United States with their respective First Ladies. It is, as always, nice to see the peaceful transfer of power even between bitter political rivals. And President Biden and President-elect Trump have certainly had some rather unkind things to say about the other. But on days like today, we put that aside and we celebrate the fact that we're Americans and we have this democracy.
Jake, Joe Biden ran for president to rid the country of Donald Trump and Trumpism. He was successful, and then 4 years later, he lost that. He lost that bid, and it was completely overturned, turned around, and this is a moment that Joe Biden warned about democracy, warned about what would happen to the country if and when this moment happened, and here it is.
Yeah, and it's such an important point of the moment that we're in, where President Biden said Donald Trump was a threat to democracy, and there are a lot of his supporters who were not very thrilled that he welcomed President Trump to the White House a few weeks after he won the election. I'm just listening in just to see if we can hear any questions there, but this was from a few moments ago. But he welcomed Trump into the White House. Despite all of that, he has had meetings with him. He has largely refrained from criticizing Donald Trump. They worked hand in hand on a major hostage deal and ceasefire in the Middle East. And there are a lot of people who are upset about that. But Joe Biden is in many ways, not perfectly, but in many ways an institutionalist. And he, according to our MJ Lee, never even considered not extending the hand to Donald Trump that he should have been extended 4 years ago. And as I watched them walking into the White House, I mean, you can't forget that it's not that often that a former president gets to walk back into a house that he's going to live in after having been moved out 4 years earlier.
Only the second time.
It's only the second time, and Donald Trump is walking back in there. He probably still recognizes and knows a lot of the staff that are there. It looks different because each president gets to make it look the way they want it to look. But that in itself is just a very unusual moment for this country. And it must be weird if you're Donald Trump and if you're Joe Biden.
Just one note on what you said, Abby. The fact that presidents like Joe Biden and Barack Obama have been friendly and collegial to Donald Trump, whether at the Jimmy Carter funeral or today or after the election when President Biden welcomed incoming President Trump. That has not only upset Democrats, it has been used by Trump supporters as evidence that Biden and Obama never really meant the things that they said about Donald Trump. And the truth of the matter is, I think Biden and Obama meant completely, sincerely, the things that they said about Donald Trump. I'm not saying I agree with it or disagree with it, but I think they completely meant it. I think that they also, in addition, believe in these institutions of the peaceful transfer of power. Dan?
I just want to mention one thing, because we can see a bird's eye view of the flags. And at the Capitol, we had seen, there you go, there's the outside of the Capitol. The flag is all the way up, and that is because House Speaker Mike Johnson ordered it so. Why does that matter? Because we are still in an official 30-day mourning period of the late President Jimmy Carter, and the flags are supposed to be at half-staff for 30 days, including right now. But what are we looking at, Jake and Abby? We're looking at several flags all the way up outside of the White House, even though the one on top of the White House is halfway down. And the Washington Monument as well. Now, again, why is this even worth a mention? It's because this is something that was incredibly important to Donald Trump. He was on a little bit of a rant about the fact that he wanted those flags to be all the way up for his inauguration. The fact that the one that we're looking at right now on top of the White House is not, but all of these others around Washington are all the way up, is interesting.
I suspect that within a couple hours, the one on top of the White House will be at full staff.
2 hours.
A number of Republican governors have addressed this by saying, for instance, I think Glenn Youngkin in Virginia and Greg Abbott in Texas, they are raising the flags today in honor of Inauguration Day, in honor of Donald Trump. And then tomorrow, the flags will come back to half-staff for the memorial period. I completely understand why Donald Trump wants it up for his inaugural. That makes sense.
And now it's happened.
Of all the things, I think it's fine. I think it's fine. I mean, Donald Trump is a man who has a lot of peculiarities about optics, and this is one of them. But there's going to be a lot happening today that's incredibly consequential, and I think that we should remain vigilant about that.
I think the celebration of America is beyond Donald Trump, and I think it makes perfect sense to me, the compromise that the Republican governors are making. Caitlin Collins has some news now. We are all awaiting specifics. They always say that you campaign in poetry, and I think maybe it was David Axelrod who came up with you campaign in poetry and govern in prose. Maybe not, maybe it precedes him, I'm not sure. But in any case, we are waiting for the prose. We're waiting for the details about what Donald Trump is exactly going to do. Caitlin Collins, you're learning more.
And Trump will be governing by executive order, certainly today, Jake. We know he's going to be signing a lot of executive orders. They're going to be coming fast and furious after he takes the oath of office. We're learning more about just where he's going on this. Some of them will focus on his biggest priorities, like immigration, 10 of them to be exact, I'm told. But also some of them will focus on things he said in recent weeks, which is, remember that press conference he had at Mar-a-Lago where he talked about renaming the Gulf of Mexico to Gulf of America? That is going to be an executive action that he plans to sign today, I am told. That will be one effort. But also, Jake, another one he's going to do is not rescinding stuff just that Biden has done. He's also going to try to change things that President Barack Obama did, including naming the highest peak in North America, which Biden named, or excuse me, that Obama named Denali. He will be reverting the name back to Mount McKinley. That is not just because he wants to undo something that President Obama did. President Trump has a fondness for President McKinley, who the mountain was named after he was assassinated. He wants to mirror a lot of his tariff policies potentially as soon as he takes office. We're still waiting to see what it looks like in terms of tariffs that Trump enacts, and something that he has said he would use as a tool when negotiating with other nations. But those are two steps that he will be taking today, renaming the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America, and also renaming Denali to reverting the name back to Mount McKinley. As you can see here, John Boehner and Newt Gingrich and Kevin McCarthy, three former House speakers, lining up to enter the Rotunda for Trump's inauguration.
Another reminder, Caitlin Collins, that this is a celebration of America for Americans. In addition, I should note, Dana Bash, I'm told that there are a number of Democratic governors that have also ordered flags to full staff today. Kathy Hochul out of New York, and the governors of Washington State, Colorado, and Gavin Newsom, California as well. Because again, this is not about Trump or Biden, this is about the American people.
Can I just say about what Caitlin just reported on the EO on the Gulf of Mexico? This is not really something that Trump can accomplish just by an executive order. The Gulf of Mexico has been named that way for literally hundreds of years, even before the United States was a country, actually, and it's internationally recognized. There are going to be some other steps to this, but I don't think that's stopping them from making these kinds of symbolic executive orders. I think you could say the same about birthright citizenship. The idea that they want to end birthright citizenship, they know that that's going to go directly to the courts and that the courts will have a say. This is a very Trump-friendly court, so we don't know how that's going to go down, but the established precedent is that birthright citizenship is the law of the land, and it would require a constitutional amendment to change that. So as we get these executive orders, they're gonna, some of them are gonna be for some shock and awe effect, for symbolic effect, as many of them are. He wouldn't be the first president to do that. And some of them will have real immediate effect, but we'll take them one by one and see actually what the text of these orders are, because I think the devil is in the details for a lot of this stuff.
Let's go to MJ Lee now at the White House, who can tell us more about this meeting between outgoing President Biden and incoming President Trump. Oh, to be a fly on that wall. MJ, what's your understanding of what they talked about?
Yeah, you know, as the Trumps just arrived here at the White House, there were some pool reporters, of course, standing outside the North Portico as that arrival was happening. There's that moment again. We are told that when the Trumps stepped out of the SUV, President Biden said to incoming President Trump the words, "Welcome home." And just moments prior to that, we are told that when reporters asked President Biden, "What is your message today?" he responded with one word, and that word was joy. I am told by a White House official who is here that the two couples walked straight inside through the grand foyer and into the blue room. That is where we expect the four to now sit down and spend some time together. They are being served both tea and coffee. This, of course, is officially sort of described as the tea ceremony. I am just struck by this little piece of color that we are getting again from the pool reports, from the reporters that were standing there, that President Biden, first of all, chose to use the word joy to describe his message for the day, because we know for a fact that joy is not exactly the feeling that President Biden is feeling right now in this moment of basically handing the baton back to a man that he has repeatedly said poses a grave threat to democracy. And as we have been reporting for other reasons too, the president has been in a bit of a dark headspace, feeling angry about being forced out of the 2024 race, feeling embittered about the blame that he is getting for Donald Trump's return. And also just the president being put in this position, of course, where he has to even utter the words welcome home to a man that he very much hoped would never return home to the White House. So just goes without saying, look, we are going through the motion of all of the ceremonies, the traditions that come with this day. And as I reported earlier, those traditions were ones that I'm told President Biden felt strongly he had to stick by. But you can easily imagine that as he is going through those motions, these are not easy things for President Biden to be participating in today.
No, not at all. And for those wondering, because I know there are a lot of Democrats out there who think that the reason that Donald Trump is back at the White House is because Joe Biden made the decision to run for re-election, and everything that happened in 2024 with the CNN debate and obvious moments of communication problems. A lot of people in the Democratic Party hold Joe Biden responsible for ushering the Trump era back in. That is not how President Biden sees it. President Biden thinks that the Democratic elites kicked him out and that he could have won if he had been permitted to stay at the top of the ticket. Pollsters can discuss whether or not there's any data to support that contention, but that is the president's belief. Let's go to Caitlin Collins at Emancipation Hall right now to give us the latest on what's going on in the room where they are expecting to inaugurate the 47th president. Caitlin?
Well, Jake, here's a lot of the cabinet getting off the buses. There's Kristi Noem, I should say hopeful cabinet. Kristi Noem, Trump's pick to be his DHS secretary. I also saw Howard Lutnick getting off the bus. That is Trump's pick to be his commerce secretary. There's Pam Bondi, Marco Rubio, Doug Collins. You're seeing all of them filter in here. And Scott Bessent as well, Trump's pick to run the Treasury Department. RFK Jr. as well. Really, this entire bus is the entire Trump cabinet, should they be confirmed by the Senate. Most of them appear to be on a glide path to doing so. Marco Rubio is expected to be the first one to be confirmed. Jake, it remains to be seen when the others are confirmed there, but obviously that'll be a key part of governing for the president-elect turned president. I'm here at Emancipation Hall, and this is kind of the overflow room where a lot of the guests who aren't going to fit in the rotunda, because you saw that you can only squeeze so many chairs in there, they'll be in here. This is really the visitor center area of the Capitol. It's named after the enslaved people who built the Capitol, I should note, Jake. And so this is where Trump will come after he delivers that inaugural address. I'll actually be listening closely to that because I don't think that is a scripted speech. I believe there are unscripted remarks that Trump will be delivering here just briefly to those who are gathered here in the room, and it'll be their first opportunity to get a glimpse of the president and the vice president, J.D. Vance, once they are sworn in. Right now, so far, you're already seeing a few notable figures here in the room. Governors will be here and other VIPs at the top. Guests of congressional leadership we know are expected to be seated here. Hakeem Jeffries, the Democratic leader in the House, is one that we're expected to be here. Right now, you're looking at the north lawn of the White House. You can see those green tents in the background. That's where all the TV reporters stand and deliver their reports. Of course, the Beast is leading off. That's the car that Joe Biden and Donald Trump will get into together with the First Lady and the incoming First Lady to ride up here to the Capitol where I am, Jake. And you're just getting a sense of all of the people, the VIPs that have been shifting around and figuring out where they're going here. That's been an issue in recent days, is for those who are not only replanning the inauguration to move it from outside to inside. They had a lot of VIPs calling, wanting to make sure they got good seats at this inauguration. And right now they are showing air here inside the room. People are watching along. They were applauding as Trump got out of the car at the White House and greeted President Biden and the First Lady Jill Biden. But obviously just a fascinating scene for all of these small moments that you watch here. And in just a few moments, that rotunda will be filled with all of the guests who are seated here, as well as Emancipation Hall, where they're playing music and people are gathering and milling about as you're looking around to see who it is that has been invited and gotten a prime seat at Trump's inauguration now that it's indoors. And very few people are here, Jake.
Caitlin Collins, was it Trump's call to have the inauguration indoors? Was he ultimately the one that made that decision?
His team went to him and said that they believed it would be the best decision to make because they were looking at the forecast, Jake. I know a lot of people have speculated about whether or not this was about crowd size. I was told right off the bat, this was not a decision they wanted to make. They wanted it to be outside. Obviously, Trump is a producer at heart and cares about the visuals and how things look. That's often how he picks some of the people who are going in his cabinet. He says they look like they're made for TV. And so that was certainly a factor in it. And they made the decision because they said people would be lining up at 6 and 7 a.m. and they were just worried about keeping people outside for that long, Jake. And so that is how they made ultimately this decision to put everybody inside. I do think the fact that Ronald Reagan was the only other president to have been sworn in inside 40 years ago played a factor in all of this, Jake, because obviously Trump likes to style himself after Reagan. He believes that he had a Reagan-esque victory this time around as he's been arguing this mandate that he has given. He not only won the election, he also won the popular vote here. And so all of that is a factor in this. And the other thing to watch, Jake, world leaders. We know several dignitaries are going to be here. The Italian Prime Minister is here. She's actually one of the very few G7 leaders who's forged a close relationship with Trump and his incoming team. We talk about the big tech executives and everyone trying to get in good with Trump. It's not just them. World leaders are also trying to do the same. And you know, they were navigating Trump the first time around, and now they're back to
Vamos a ver si el mundo aparece por aquí.
There's Elon Musk, Jake, as you
Los
can see there in the
invitados,
middle,
mire,
walking
eso es
in the Capitol.
Capitolio. No creo que el mundo entre ahí porque esos son limitados los asientos.
The reason I bring up the issue of the weather is because obviously you see members of the Trump cabinet walking into, I believe that's Doug Burgum maybe, walking inside the Capitol right now. That's not Doug Burgum, I apologize.
No creo que el mundo entre ahí porque ha reducido el espacio en el Capitolio.
Senate Republican leader Mitch McConnell, the former Senate
minority leader,
with his wife Elaine Chao, the former Secretary of Labor during the Trump administration. Transportation, I apologize. She also, she served at Labor in a previous administration. She resigned from the Trump presidency on January 6, 2021. She was so upset with the insurrection. Obviously, those feelings have waned. But in any case, the point I was just making was like, it actually has not turned out to be as frigid as the forecast had predicted. Jeff Zeleny is there at the Rotunda. Jeff Zeleny, tell us what you're seeing.
Yes. Well, Jake, we can see members of the cabinet, the designees walking in, as you were saying.
What happened?
Just on the east front of the Capitol, and we saw Marco Rubio, of course, the former senator from Florida. He's likely to be the first cabinet nominee to be the Secretary of State to be confirmed by this U.S. Senate, and then several others. Governor Doug Burgum, as you were saying, was actually in the line. And I can speak to the weather for a second, Jake. The cabinet nominees just came directly off of heated buses and walked inside, so they were outside for not very long. It is very sunny out here. I don't know if you can see our shot. It's definitely sunny, but it is windy and it's cold. I was not here during the Reagan inaugural, but I was here during the Obama inaugural in 2009. It felt colder to me that morning, but it is similar. So there's no doubt it is very frigid if people were sitting outside, certainly aging people for a long time. But we are now still seeing more VIPs coming through. But again, Elon Musk was right behind members of the cabinet walking into the east front of the Capitol just moments ago, Jake.
There's Joe Rogan, the popular podcast host, Tim Cook from Apple, the CEO of Apple. We've talked a bunch about all the tech executives.
¿Y usted creía en la cortina del mundo que el mundo iba a estar ahí? La gente vende humo, la gente vende humo. Vamos a ver si aparece el mundo por ahí.
And Mark Zuckerberg is there as well.
¿Cómo nos engañó la oposición, verga?
There's Mark Zuckerberg walking in as well. These are a lot of tech executives that had previously faced the scorn of Donald Trump, who have spent the last few months trying desperately to get in his good graces. Dana Bash.
Estoy transmitiendo por YouTube.
Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon, who also has a
$40 million
documentary deal with the First Lady for
Este es para mi YouTube y lo ves completico. Esto es CNN, mi amor, que está transmitiendo.
Not sure what their exact status is right now. Lauren Sanchez, and as you said, Mark Zuckerberg and his wife as well.
It's such a small ceremony. Just to be clear, this is a tiny ceremony relative to what was supposed to happen on the Capitol. There are a lot of people who maybe thought that they would be in proximity to this ceremony who will not be.
Mira inside, mira adentro.
Still getting their seats.
¿Tú crees que Mono lo van a meter ahí?
And I think that's a testament to just.
¿Tú crees que el mundo va a estar dentro de esto? No, eso es pura gente VIP, mi amor. En el Capitolio. Todo esto que vendieron cortina de humo, que el mundo sí aparecía ahí. ¿Cómo le mienten esta posición del carajo? Nos mintieron a toditos. Se burlaron de nosotros, mejor
Of tremendously frigid and uncomfortable temperatures. There are Bill Clinton and former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, of course, who ran for president in 2016 and lost to Donald Trump in his first run, attending, once again, a celebration of American democracy, a celebration of the peaceful transfer of power.
And I'm told that the former presidents had discussions about...
There's Boris Johnson, the former British Prime Minister, walking in.
About whether to go, are they going to all make a decision together? What they should go to, what they should not go to. They are going to the actual inauguration, not the luncheon.
Buscan la lupa para decir en el mundo.
But it is
sí, yo sé, María. Nos engañó la oposición. Y vinieron la cortina de humo ese que el mundo iba a estar ahí. No, la chica, ¿cómo se burlaron?
Provides to the country as one of the people. If she can show up for Donald Trump, it is not about Donald Trump, it is about the United States of America, about democracy, along with the...
As former President Barack Obama, it was Obama's presidency that really created Donald Trump as a political force, as he falsely said that Barack Obama falsely suggested that Barack Obama had not been born in the United States, but that the first African-American president in American history had actually been born in Africa, a racist and malicious lie. But Barack Obama, nonetheless, attending this inaugural, Michelle Obama not there, as we've discussed in the immortal words of Bartleby the Scrivener, she would prefer not to attend. Her absence from both the Carter funeral and the inaugural is interesting. Vivek Ramaswamy, who is was part of the Department of Government Efficiency that Donald Trump.
I think he still is at this.
But he is resigning from it, and there is some talk of him running for governor of Ohio.
Right. He's almost certainly going to be doing that.
Yeah, we're seeing several members of Congress, I think most of them on the screen right now.
Ryan Mast, the incoming chairman of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, combat veteran from Florida, Jim Clyburn, who, if it weren't for Jim Clyburn, from South Carolina, the dean of the South Carolina delegation, I doubt Joe Biden would have been elected president to begin with.
President Biden spent the day with him yesterday in South Carolina.
And Abby, you talked about the tech leaders coming in and how, now that it is inside, how precious and valuable each of these seats is. My understanding from somebody who's been involved is that the actual members of Congress who work there, who come in there and serve the American people every day, there was a lot of jockeying to see which ones, particularly in the House where you have 435 people, which of them could actually get seats.
Because they're practically on top of each other.
Yeah,
the chairs aren't close.
I don't see Paul Ryan, former Speaker Paul Ryan. I'm not sure if he is planning on attending or not. Obviously, former House Speaker Denny Hastert, who did time in prison and was called a serial child molester by a judge. I'm not sure if he was invited. His portrait was taken down.
Nancy Pelosi also said that she's not coming, which is...
But that's quite different from Dennis Hastert.
No, sorry. But we were just talking about former speakers.
Yes, Pelosi
I did not mean to equate the two.
Pelosi, there is no love lost between Nancy Pelosi and President-elect Donald Trump.
The Gingriches, John Boehner on the screen there.
There's a lot of Republican members of Congress who are greeting their former bosses, their former leaders, former speakers. Newt Gingrich, who is a close ally of Donald Trump, more so than probably any Republican speaker of them all. Newt Gingrich.
I mean, there's a lot that you can say about Newt Gingrich being a sort of forerunner for the forces that allowed Donald Trump to be in the White House, but he's simply proven to be someone who is a strong supporter of him and gave him a sense of legitimacy when he was running back in 2016.
Let's go to Manu Raju, our chief congressional correspondent, who is there. Manu, tell us what you're seeing.
Yeah, every ex-member of Congress was invited to attend this ceremony, Jake. In fact, there are more than about 800 seats, of course, 535 members of Congress, and the question is who ultimately will attend. You're seeing Republican members right now file in. We expect most Republicans to do attend, but there has been actually a debate among Democrats themselves. There's been a split about which Democrats would actually come. Some, like the Democratic leaders, plan to attend, of course, like Hakeem Jeffries, even though Jeffries, I'm told, has not spoken to Donald Trump really since Donald Trump's first term in office. But there are a number of others, Nancy Pelosi being one, who is skipping today's ceremony, and some also on the left flank of the Democratic caucus, like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is one who is not planning on attending. Either Ilhan Omar, a progressive Democrat as well, who has criticized Democrats who are attending after saying that Donald Trump was a threat to the democracy. And I'm told, Jake, that there's actually been a debate over the weekend, a lot of members texting about whether they should come, and we'll see. A lot of members attend, but some Democrats choosing not to, Jake.
All right, thank you so much, Manu. They're loading up the limos. We just saw the presidential spouses come out. One of the interesting things in terms of guests, we've also seen, in addition to supporters like Elon Musk, in addition to supporters like Joe Rogan, we've also seen, we just saw Rudy Giuliani walking in to the Rotunda. He's been in the news a lot lately for his legal tussles. There is the mayor of Washington.
Ahí está, mira, ahí está el mundo, ahí está el mundo. ¡Ah! ¿Cómo nos engañaron a toditos? ¿Cómo nos vieron cara de poseta a toditos? Vale, qué vaina.
But influencer, certainly.
Very influential.
Very influential, yes, absolutely. Anderson Cooper.
Thanks very much. As we continue to look at dignitaries arriving with Chris Emory, the White House usher from 1986 and 1990.
Pero ya en el Capitolio.
You were there through Reagan, H.W. Bush, the Clinton administration. Talk about Inauguration Day from your vantage. What is it like for people?
Absolute chaos, but control.
No, usted lo estoy buscando con la lupa y no lo encuentro.
And right now, the president and the existing president and the future president are about to leave the White House. That's when the White House resident staff really gets to work. There's moving vans on the south grounds. Moving vans will be moved to the north
grounds. Según los ventas de humo, falso, no invitaron nada. Están en el Capitolio.
We hope we have about 6 or 7 hours to move the new family in, get the remaining items of the former family out. And it's chaos, but it's organized, and it's been the same way for 200 years.
The relationship, I mean, is it hard watching people that you care about, have worked with, leave?
It's very emotional. In fact, usually about 10:30, the former first family resident staff. I remember Mrs. Reagan was crying when that occurred. President Bush.
Aquí viene, se están formando porque el mundo viene entrando.
As they went around and shook hands.
Estos funcionarios aquí se están formando.
Is there like a deep cleaning?
Los Navy, porque el mundo va a entrar por ahí.
We have 97 staff. Everybody's working, and it's just everyone is assigned to a different floor to handle the move-in of the clothing, the furniture, new electronics. All these things are taking place. All
estoy buscando hace rato y no lo veo.
Right, there's 73 to 79 days.
Ahí está la limusina, ahí va abajo el mundo, no se lo pierdan, ahí va abajo.
I mean, how do you know where everything's supposed to go?
Well, for the family moving out, they start planning early, so a lot of those items have been shipped. New things coming in, we work with the first lady coming in to find out where she wants things, how it's to be set up, how many guests the first night. Bush has had 32 guests the first night when they came in 1989. Crazy.
Míralo ahí, se cortó el pelo, que tiene la chivita blanca.
Rooms never had beds. We were trying to account for the actual first family members and then closer staying to on the main floor, the second floor. It was crazy.
Wow. And you know, I mean, do you know what towels they like?
Ahí está la limusina, ahí va abajo el mundo, ya, espérate. Le tiraron la cortina roja, la verga, la alfombra roja.
Does it make it easier because President Trump has already been in the White House?
Yes, absolutely. Same with Grover Cleveland. I mean, he just walked in, everything's already set
Were you
up.
there for Grover Cleveland?
No, I was there a year after.
Okay. But that does make it easier. I mean, it's one less thing it's not a mystery to them.
Well, it's not a mystery. I mean, you have to account for, like as I said, the things they're going to access first. Their toiletries, their clothing, and then we have to account for the house guests. Who's coming in? How many meals? What do they want? So that goes on for quite a while.
I also want to bring Vanessa.
Exactamente, cortina de humo, pote de humo, como quieran llamar.
Talk about, if you will, what Melania Trump is wearing her inauguration look today versus 2017.
Estoy transmitiendo por
this time around,
YouTube.
she's wearing Adam Lucas, who's a New York designer. He's an independent. She's someone she's worn before, and she's got a quite structured, very.
Míralo ahí vestido de rojo, el de rojo, el de rojo.
Coat and
El de rojo, míralo ahí, míralo ahí.
It's by Eric Javits. And it's a sort of marked difference from what she wore in 2017, where she really seemed to be making an effort to be part of the sort of First Lady continuum. She wore a Ralph Lauren look. She was his 5th First Lady, and it was very evocative of Jackie Kennedy.
Puro pote de humo, nos engañaron una vez más.
Message of some sort?
Well, I mean, John F.
Estoy
Kennedy
esperando para que se aparece por ahí en la colita esta.
And Pastor, what? I don't know how much. How is?
Está la limusina aquí afuera, míralo aquí, están esperando para que entre cuando estén todos listos. Es que él entra por ahí.
Any designer would love to dress the First Lady.
Mira la esposa de Mundo, la de blanco, mírala ahí. No es ella, la esposa de Mundo.
It is their honor to dress.
No es ella.
It's not necessarily that Trump's.
Ahí viene Trump, ahí va.
So that's the look you're.
Esa mujer es bella, esa mujer es buena, muchacha. Ahí cuando estaba entrando en la iglesia. Aquí está cuando va a entrar en el cabildo.
Who's the most fashionable or sort of iconic person?
I mean, certainly the most recent one, Michelle Obama, before her Jacqueline Kennedy, but every First Lady has used her clothing to make a statement because that's part of the job, honestly, right? It's to represent the look of the administration, the values of the administration through imagery, right? These are people who.
And we're seeing, by the way, both First Ladies, the current.
Ahí se van para el Capitolio.
First Lady, also the past First Lady, and they will ride together. Jill Biden's, she in Ralph Lauren?
She's in Ralph Lauren.
Hasta el final, chacha.
Very sort of full circle, right? Her husband wore Ralph Lauren for the first his
Ahí está saliendo de la Casa Blanca.
He's also wearing Ralph Lauren.
No me ve, yo estoy ahí filmando en la puerta, no me ve.
Tradition, this is how it's always done, except the last time when this wasn't done.
And so,
es que el televisor es demasiado grande, no me da la pantalla.
Former president leaving, even though there's no love lost.
Él está que ataca la pantalla, ¿vale?
Trump. There's no love lost between Joe Biden and Donald Trump. The current president, Joe Biden, for another hour and a half.
Estoy transmitiendo por YouTube.
He's respecting American norms. And you're right, that did not happen 4 years ago. So is that a reset? We're going to have a lot of political conversations today. I think for the next 90 minutes, maybe we should have an American conversation. That you have an outgoing president who was not afforded this courtesy 4 years ago, saying, I'm not going to forget that, but there's something more important than that, and they're doing that today. And to their credit, the Trumps are very gracious when they came into the House. They said, good morning. We're having an American moment. By the time the day is over, I suspect we'll be having some political debates and conversations as well.
This is the discussion.
Ahí viene Michuga, Michuga va a salir de ahí.
That believes in norms, then you should observe the norms. You should.
Por ahí va a salir el mundo con Trump.
Lack of observance.
No lo pierda, prendan cámara, graben pantalla.
Jim Gangel, as you watch this, we have watched this kind of moment every 4 years, except for last year, for a long time. What stands out to you?
No, I think just the underlying political reality that
no se lo pierdan, por ahí va a salir Trump con el mundo.
Earlier. This is
También.
painful. Nobody likes to lose, and even though the candidate was Vice President Harris at the time, she shared that.
Mira, aquí viene, no se lo pierdan. No lo pierda, Michael, sale aquí.
Former President Bush 41 about this.
Ah, está el vicepresidente.
A second term.
Con su mujer. Esta no se pudo por un vestido más fosforescente.
Because of the underlying feelings that they have for Donald Trump.
Well, speaking of Vice President Harris and Vice President-elect J.D. Vance getting into there, when this is the ride to the Capitol.
¿Cómo se burlaron de nosotros una vez más los vendepotes de humo?
In this moment, again, this is something which is normal except for the last time around. What are your thoughts right now?
Well, as you know, I did spend some time as the
Vamos a ver, estar aquí caminando.
the Nixon Library.
Péguenlo, pa' ver.
Thinking that before
Si viene el punticoma, pa' ver.
the American politician who experienced the greatest comeback was Richard Nixon. After all,
Nada, no se ve nada. Vamos a ver.
politically dead.
Vamos a ver quién es esta.
Governor, and he had lost in 1960 against John Kennedy. And of course, in 1968, he ascends to the presidency. Well, Donald Trump has topped that.
Se burlaron otra vez nosotros.
Our modern era. The person who has achieved the
¿Tú
greatest.
crees que iba a estar ahí con esa alcurnia, con esos VIP? No, echamos.
And so I'm thinking a lot about that. And I'm thinking about whether in January of 2021, how many people other than Donald Trump thought that these.
Era taca la pantalla, mi amores.
So,
Reparta, no se pierda que ahí va a entrar en una limusina ese que va a salir Trump con el mundo.
For the Trumps, and it's a
No lo
moment of
pierdan.
reflection for I think all Americans.
John King, to Tim's point, it is.
Ahí no hay grado porque eso es interno. Esto no lo hicieron afuera por el frío, eso es el Capitolio adentro, esto es la Casa
What
Blanca.
happened with the Capitol, that this moment would be occurring.
Absolutely inconceivable to
No lo pierdan.
anybody but Donald Trump. Maybe
Por aquí va a salir Trump con el mundo González Urrutia.
Most of Donald Trump's party was trying to create distance from him. Most of Donald Trump's party was embarrassed by the events of January 6th and the bigger denial of the election that actually started on election night in 2020. However, he single-handedly won the nomination without much of a fight, actually, and then won the presidency. Now, again, the question is, Joe Biden thought that his win included the fact that he had forever isolated Donald Trump to the ash heap of history. He was wrong about that. So Donald Trump,
Ahí estamos esperando,
the
¿eh?
Bible today,
Ahí va a salir
how he
Trump
interprets
con
his victory.
el mundo
It was
González.
a big victory.
No lo pierdan, denle taca, repartan el envío para que no se pierdan a Trump.
Now puts Richard Nixon number
Estamos
2.
buscando por aquí la mujer que la dejaron por aquí sola.
However, does he overread that mandate?
Ahí estará, mira, ahí está el mundo por ahí. No, el mundo no, la mujer.
Much more proud, much more public.
Saludos, Lanie.
It's not a huge win in the popular vote, but it's a win. So Joe Biden overread his mandate, I think. Donald Trump being there right now, we're about to walk out those doors, is proof of that. Does Donald Trump overread his?
MJ Lee at the White House, I understand you have some.
Hola, buenos días. Eso ahorita en vivo, papi, no me ve. La toma de posesión de Trump. Por aquí va a salir el mundo González con Trump, aquí, de la Casa Blanca. White House y está el Capitolio. Pantalla dividida. Ajá. Ese mira, aquí está el de TikTok, aquí está el dueño de TikTok, míralo aquí. Aquí está el dueño de TikTok, míralo, ¿vieron? Aquí está el dueño de TikTok, míralo, Ahí está el hombre de TikTok. Ajá, ahí está, míralo ahí. Ese no es el dueño de TikTok, chun chun. Míralo, ese no es. Este no es el CEO de TikTok.
Now, we are watching those doors to see the Bidens and the Trumps emerge after their meeting inside the Blue Room at the White House for some coffee and tea. We should keep in mind, once President Biden gets inside that motorcade, this will be the last time that President Biden rides the presidential motorcade
¿para quién sale aquí?
a sitting president. There they are.
Aquí viene, mira. Mira Donald Trump con el mundo González. Mira los dos juntos, wow, mira el mundo con Trump. Mírenlo. Ahí va, mira, el mundo va para el otro lado. La señora de azul le va a abrir la puerta. Mira, Trump, mira, aquí va entrando Mundo González en la limusina, wow. Miren a Mundo González Urrutia. Miren eso, pana, qué alegría. Ve nuestro presidente aquí montado con Trump en la limusina.
It is, John, just an extraordinary moment. I mean, given the history of these two men, given the history of what we have seen, given the career